Hi, friends. Welcome back to the Parenting Epilepsy podcast. I'm so glad you're here today. This episode is a really personal one. I'm sharing how our child's diagnosis and our journey together have made me stronger than I ever imagined. So maybe you personally are in this stage right now, or this season of the journey. The appointments, the waiting, the unknown, or maybe you've been walking through this path for a while. Wherever you are, I hope that our story reminds you that even in the hardest moments, strength can grow in the most unexpected ways. So thinking back, and I know I've talked a little bit about this in, I believe it was the first episode, but our daughter was first diagnosed with epilepsy. She had infantile spasms. Those started when she was 4 months old. She would seize, sometimes looking back, it's kind of funny how your brain works. I've kind of blurred some of this out, but I think it was about, multiple to 100 times, hundreds of times a day. We ultimately got her to, once this first started happening, we got her to an emergency room. Fast forward, after realizing that we weren't quite getting the care that we wanted or I don't think they really understood her condition at a local hospital that we were at. So we ultimately got her to a children's hospital in the Chicago area where we live. So life before that hiccup was, I want to say simple, as simple as it can be for a mom, a dad, and 3 little girls. My other daughters at that time were 7 and 5. Our daughter Katie, the one who has epilepsy, was just an infant. And overall life was good. My oldest was in school. My middle daughter was, I believe, in preschool. And I had actually just went back to work. I was in the corporate world when this all started happening. So overall, we were looking forward to the holidays because it was December. I'm actually just before Christmas. And yeah, life was good. There's a picture in my phone. And when I look at that picture, I'll never forget, we were at a school event for my oldest daughter. And every time I look at it, I think, you had no idea how your life was about to change the next day. And it just, to take a deep breath, it's just crazy. So anyways, but life was good. And I think despite a lot of the challenges that we went through, what I'll ultimately get through after I go through this next, story of our journey, I want to help other parents out there understand how, despite how difficult it can be and all of just the different things that we go through, there can be a light at the end of the tunnel. And you just kind of have to work really hard together as a family and with your spouse or partner as a couple to get to that point. So moving on, we finally, fast forward, we received a diagnosis that our daughter Katie had, she had infantile spasms, but then also they knew at that time that she had what's known as cortical dysplasia. Specifically at that time, focal cortical dysplasia, because what they could see is that her seizures were coming initiating from the right side of her brain. So, we tried numerous medications. I think at that time it was probably 6 or 7. And mind you, she's only, at that point, once we got the diagnosis, and then we had a brief period without any seizures because they were able to stop the infantile spasms. And then fast forward, I think she was roughly about 18 months old. That's when the seizures came back, and we knew that would happen. So now here we are. It's January 2016, I believe that was. No, 2015. January 2015, and we're back to the chaos of epilepsy. And, I was grateful for the progress that she had made. She had learned how to walk, crawl. She was eating just like a typical 1-year-old, independently, starting to talk, all of these great things. But now we knew, okay, here we go. This is what our doctor said would happen. And now we got to figure out this next phase of treatment, or what we need to do. I'll never forget, it was March 2015. She had a really rough seizure. It was longer. I mean, when I say longer for her, it was a couple of minutes. We were visiting with family, and my husband was actually out of town for work. And I remember calling the hospital and letting them know, and they relayed the message onto our epileptologist or neurologist. And I remember exactly where I was, and she said, okay, let's schedule an appointment. We need to start discussing brain surgery. And I was just like, oh my God, like, how did we get to this point? Because all along you're kind of just hoping that, one medication is going to work, or something else is going to work, and that you're not going to have to go down that road. So while I can recall crying my eyes out, I remember where I was when I received that call. I knew deep down that we were so far down this path that we had to do something and be open-minded to the options that were out there and were available to us, to help our daughter get to potentially seizure freedom and or seizures with less frequency that were less debilitating to her. Our daughter went on to have her first surgery just before her second birthday. It unfortunately was not successful, and her seizures continued. So over those next 2.5 years, my husband and I did numerous tests with her, a lot of hospital stays, got multiple second opinions from other hospitals and neurosurgeons, pediatric neurosurgeons. And then took all of this info and data that we received, and it was all pointing towards what's known as a functional hemispherectomy, where the right brain is disconnected from what at that time appeared to be the left healthy side of her brain. So in preparation for this major surgery, we did so much for our daughter, but I also knew deep down that I personally, as her mom, needed to mentally prepare for something like this, because I was pretty terrified, quite rightfully so. So in prep for this, I began looking into audiobooks, since I'm always in the car, about being mentally strong, getting through difficult life events and challenges. I have to go back because I would love to share what those books were. And I know I have some record of them. I just don't have it with me right now. But I'll share what those were for others. So our daughter's surgery date was scheduled. And as it got closer, I could feel my anxiety rise, and my mind just constantly racing with thoughts like, will this surgery be the one that saves her from epilepsy? Will my other two daughters be okay while I'm gone for a few months, quite honestly? Will she be the same kids, or will she be the same kid after this surgery? And even though we asked that question multiple times to every doctor that we saw, and they all reassured us that yes, because of the nature of her type of epilepsy, her personality wouldn't change. And thankfully, just cut to the chase, it did not. She is still her amazing, hilarious, just feisty, happy self. But we didn't know that at that time. And when you're impacting or doing something where you're touching the brain, it can be scary. So I would calm myself by, shifting back to focusing on my books. And I think during that time, I really learned how to, this is like always something I'm working on, but staying in control of my thoughts and allowing and really being aware of where my brain was going. I knew that as a mom, I needed to be not only strong for Katie, our daughter, having the surgery, but my other two girls. I wanted to be a good support system for my husband. So finally, here we are. The day of surgery has arrived. The surgery itself was like 6 to 8 hours long by the time they prep her and all of that. And my husband and I just could not wait to see our strong baby girl, who at the time was 4. We finally got to see her. And best of all, she remembered us. That was first and foremost the most relieving part of all of this. It was kind of interesting. She didn't talk to us at first, but then I'll never forget this. Once she was feeling better, we had her FaceTime with our 2 older daughters. And all of a sudden, she started talking when she saw them. It was the absolute sweetest, like we were bawling. It was so amazing. So yeah, we got to see her. She remembered us. We smiled. She got to talk to them. But then those next 2 weeks in the hospital were a lot. Full of highs and lows. Watching her get out of bed with support. She had tons of therapists coming in from the hospital to help her just do simple things such as turning her head, looking up and down, working on, scanning, because when a child has hemispherectomy, they have what is called the hemianopia, and that's where you can only see out of half of the hemisphere, basically, of each eye. So I'll get into, all of the details and break down kind of some of the things that we needed to focus on in therapy in a different episode. But just there was so much change that she needed to adapt to, and I was just so proud of how she just did it. It was not easy. There was a lot of tears, a lot of pain. You can't even imagine, but she did it. So once she was released from the hospital, her and I were transferred by a non-emergency ambulance to the Shirley Ryan Ability Lab in Chicago for 6 to 8 weeks of inpatient rehab. So during that time, those were probably some of the most challenging weeks for our family for so many reasons. While it was great that she was out of the hospital, we were now it was time to get to work. And my husband, Justin, went home to be back with our other 2 daughters, who, while we were in the hospital with her, they were being watched by family, and we were so grateful for that. but we knew they needed their parents back. And so we made the decision that I would stay with Katie in inpatient rehab and that he would go back with them. And again, they came to see us and all of that, so it was great. I also knew that I was doing the right thing by staying with our youngest daughter during inpatient rehab, but it was definitely the next phase where mental health, mental strength was going to be once again tested. Watching our daughter make such huge progress in therapy, it was just, it was mind-blowing. It made me so happy. Each day she was in PT, OT, and speech. But then it was hard because, especially earlier on, she was in a lot of pain as she was recovering, because she was still recovering from a very major brain surgery. So I kept telling myself, as it would get harder and harder to be away from Justin and my girls and, just the normal everyday life of being in your own home, this isn't forever, and this is the best thing for our daughter at that time. Well, fast forward about 6 weeks, life is good. We're so close to getting ready to go home, and she's making progress again in all her therapies. But then one morning, as I was about to wake her up to get ready for therapy, I saw what was my worst nightmare. Before my eyes, she had a seizure. I cried so hard. I couldn't believe this was happening because she had come so far. And, after just watching everything that she went through to get to the progress that she made, I didn't want to believe it was happening. And yeah, it felt like I had been punched in the gut. And I was like, okay, all right, this too shall pass. Her surgeon said that, so as children or really anyone recovers from a brain surgery, you can have seizures as your brain, the brain's pretty complicated as you're recovering. But I just didn't have a good feeling about this because it was so far down the process. I know, at least to me, it was. So take a deep breath. I communicated this setback to our family, and despite being devastated, I remember thinking to myself, you cannot sit in this pity right now. Katie has come way too far and needs you to be her upbeat, positive supporter. And as hard as it was, I was like, okay, we're gonna get through this. A week later, she was discharged from inpatient rehab, and we would soon begin I think I said inpatient rehab. Yes, we would soon begin outpatient rehab to continue with her healing journey from that surgery. Overall, the healing, it can take like 9 months to a year, if not longer sometimes, just for all the different areas to heal. So the days and months that followed, once we got home, while it was, I do remember being relieved to be back home with my husband, my 2 daughters, and then have Katie also home. And my own bed, because if any of you know of having a child with a medically complex background, there is absolutely nothing like sleeping in your own bed after you've been sleeping in, whether it's a chair or a couch that pulls out, for multiple months. So that was like the icing on the cake. Then she began inpatient rehab a couple times a week at a local inpatient rehab facility. So over those next few weeks, it was just adapting to, I almost call it like our new life, and just figuring it all out. Figuring out how to advocate for her, knowing when she needed a break, and if she didn't voicing that for her. And then also finding my own voice as her mom and making sure that I was doing my best to advocate whatever it was, because there was a lot that she needed. So I'll stop there. The flood of new information, therapies, specialists, all the acronyms, appointments, understanding how she learns best at this now with all of these new limitations that she had because of the surgery, and how to communicate that to her school team, because at that time she was in preschool, but there was a lot of prep going on to ultimately begin kindergarten. The hardest part, I think, was just total exhaustion, which is pretty normal, and then overwhelm, and then concerns for the future and what that was going to look like. I think, that's always kind of a thought in the back of a lot of parents' minds of kids with different special needs and epilepsy. But just, especially with her just starting school and things not going as we expected she continued to have seizures after that seizure that she had before we left inpatient rehab. So just so many things to think about. Then on the positive side, there was a lot of small and huge victories. So it was learning to have hope and being grateful for those victories. And I think another big part of it was the community and support that we had as a part of that recovery process, between family, always helping out with our daughters, neighbors. I mean, there were people bringing dinners, I'm offering to help drive our kids, and I'm probably forgetting something or someone, but just so grateful for the area that we live in and the community and the help that we received during such a challenging time. So, I'm just looking at my notes here. There were days where I cried in the car after appointments, just because you're just like, sometimes it feels like you make it so far and then there's another ball that drops or something else that you need to focus on. And you just think like, can't we just get a break? But then there were also days where it's like, I celebrated the tiniest progress because it was like a gold medal. And that's the thing about life, is like, it stretches your heart in both directions at once. So it's like, when I look back now, I mean, here we are, our daughter's surgery was, oh my gosh, almost 8 years ago in January. And I realized something pretty powerful. The emotional strength that myself, but then also we as a family had to take on and be a part of our normal everyday life is just wow, just amazing. Um, Patience, courage, resilience. You shift your perspective in what you value things differently. Um, the person that personally as her mom that I've become is I would say when I look back at that time and compare to now, um, the biggest difference is I there's a lot of things, but I try to take better care of myself, as I mentioned in another episode, just because that helps me respond better to all these different things that are being thrown at us. So even though I can't say it's slowed down, it's just different. There's different things that come up as your child matures and grows up, and um, there's different things and every child is different. So as a result, both as a result of this surgery, as a result of different medications, as a result of her body individually and just her chemical makeup, there are different things that we have had to go through, and additional surgeries, additional specialists who have where it's been necessary to see. So I think I personally have, for my own health and sanity, learned to try to be more calm and take it as it comes, and really decipher between what's really important and what can wait. And then on top of that, balancing, like, for example, and I'll talk about this in another episode too, but I decided to give our daughter Katie a break from therapy. And I see people talk about this all the time, like, oh my gosh, no, we have to keep, they're going to regress, we're going to do that. And I'm like, yeah, but it's a lot. Like, she's in 3 therapies, and it's asking a lot of her. She was exhausted afterward, and not saying it was good for her. And her therapists are like her friends. Like, she's loved just about all of them. And you know who you are. So, yeah, it's just, I think there's some things that you just have to take a step back and say, okay, one thing at a time. And it's okay. She's doing okay. I'm actually, depending on when you see this, I'm in the process of getting her back into therapy right now, somewhere a little bit closer to our home. But it's just like, you got to do what's best for you and your family. What else? Yeah, there's been a lot of beauty and growth. I've learned to let go of perfect. I don't think, no one's perfect. I've learned to let go of so making time for what's most important is probably the best way to say that. Whether it's events, people, just prioritizing. Like, life is too short. Time with our children is really so short when you think about it. And just focusing on the present. What else do I have here? So if, I guess in closing, my child taught me what real strength looks like. It's not loud. It's not flashy. It's quiet. It's steady. And it shows up every single day, even when no one sees it. I mean, and I can say this not just about my youngest daughter, Catherine, but about my husband, Justin, and my other 2 girls. When I think back to what they've been through, and we have collectively been through, it's a lot. But I always encourage them and remind them, you have to keep pushing yourself and keep going, and work through these hard times, because it's only going to make you more resilient and more, I love what my husband always says, if we didn't go through these hard times, the beautiful times wouldn't be, or the happy times wouldn't be as wonderful. He says it way better than I do, but you get the point. So if you're listening, and if you're a parent that's in a hard place right now or trying to make these difficult decisions, I hear you, I see you, I understand you, and you too will get through this. Talk to the right people, pray on it, journal on it, and find your people who will listen to you and help you through this. And most importantly, take care of you so that you have a clear, healthy mind. So thank you for listening. If you can think of someone who would benefit from this show or needs to hear this, please share it. And until next time, talk soon.